Lawyer. Easy now, easy. Seriously, Ralph has had clients ranging from government entities to private sector businesses to civic groups and nonprofits. Most of what I personally know about Ralph, I learned from watching him work for civic and homeowner groups as they tried to get hesitant local governments to adhere to their own environmental laws and comprehensive plans. He's been an adjunct professor of environmental law here at FGCU and practitioner in residence and guest lecturer at the University of Florida. He is here to explain to us that we are all in the same boat. How leaky and how overloaded that boat may be, I'll leave for Ralph to explain. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Charlie. I also have a degree from University of Miami in marine science and geology, which I'm very proud of, and attended the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, and I got interested in the oceans because of pollution, and that took me to the University of Florida, where I attended law school and had an environmental law fellowship with a think tank there called the Center for Governmental Responsibility. So let's remember that, governmental responsibility, as we go forward through my talk today. The reason I became interested in marine science is because of Jacque Cousteau. I was a young child born in 1963, and I watched Jacque Cousteau religiously in the days when we had black and white television. There was no DVRs, no way of recording it. You had to be there, and I was there in front of the television a half an hour early with my dad and my sister and my mom, and we all watched it together. And you can say from the Crosby, Stills, and Nash song, "Teach your children well." My father also took me to the creek behind my back house, where I played with crayfish and collected turtles and frogs and let them go, of course, in Michigan. And when I came to Florida in high school, as a junior in high school, I fell in love with this state, probably because it was different, and change happened when I saw with my eyes what the tropical area, subtropics of Florida could look like. And I was mesmerized by the waters, and I fished and played and swam in the waters up until about 2 years ago. Then I quit going into the ocean, and I haven't been in the ocean really in this area for 2 years. Even though I visit Sanibel, I walk the beach. I've been in the ocean a few times in longboat until the flesh-eating bacteria happened, so I quit going in there. So I don't know what happened, how it happened, but it happened. We're all in the same boat. Jacque Cousteau said the sea is the great unifier, is man's only hope. We have to fix the ocean. We have to fix our waters because life depends on it. So people ask me, I get calls on the phone, "Ralph, there's a hearing coming up on this terrible zoning application, this terrible phosphate mine. They want to convert 40,000 acres of land in Hardy County to phosphate. Can we do anything about it? Is it a done deal?" They give up hope sometimes before they even begin. So the focus of my talk today is two things. Can you do anything? Do you make a difference? And then if so, how can you do things? What can you do? So organizing begins with one person. The one person in this slide is one of my heroes. She's now 17. But she was younger when she started her climate change program. Protesting a walkout for climate change at schools was one of her ideas. It took root. It's happening everywhere. She got more publicity at Davos than any of the world leaders. She's calling them out and not keeping up with their goals. This is what one person can do, and I want to hold her out as a shining example. There's another a young girl that came to the Florida bear hunt hearings, and she brought a step ladder, a two-step ladder, so she could get up over the podium and speak. And I'm convinced that her testimony helped the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission in their decisions on the bear hunt. Right now, there is no bear hunt. It's going to be coming up again, but she'll be back again. So we want to ride a wave of chaos. In chaos theory, there's something called a butterfly effect. It was a professor, scientist, Ed Lorenz. He in 1963, the year I was born, he had a discovery. He'd been doing computer models of weather since 1950. In 1963, he walked away from his computer and his printer, and he went to get some lunch, and he came back, and he had two divergent results from his weather model, and he couldn't figure out why. He thought there was something wrong with it. Back in the day, they had tubes in the computer. So he checked everything and said, no, it wasn't. The problem was solved when he figured out that it had rounded the number in the second run from 0.506127 to 0.506. So simply rounding 1,000th drastically changed the whole weather pattern that the program produced over the 2-week period. It was nearly completely different. And it showed that in this pendulum swinging, you can see if you have a two-dimensional pendulum and it always goes the same and it can't be moved and there's no friction, you'll have just an orbit. If you have some friction, it'll always be a little bit different in the real world. If you have a two-dimensional pendulum, one that swings this way and swings that way, you can never reproduce the same results. They will come out different in three-dimensional space. So then in 1972, he took that paper and consolidated with some other papers, and he wrote a paper that you may have heard of, Predictability. Does the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas? That was in 1972 when chaos theory was just beginning. In 1987, a book by James Gleick called Chaos, The Making of a New Science, transformed his idea to a general audience. Then it was picked up, subsequently to that, it's been referenced, I think, in over 50 movies. And it was originally only cited for the first 20 years in 3 meteorological journal articles. In the late 70s, a Dr. Joseph Podolsky at Woods Hole Oceanographic started applying this theory of demonstrated chaos to oceanographic currents. And it turned out it was true. And now they apply it to everything. Doctors apply it to heartbeats. It applies there. Your heart doesn't beat exactly the same every time. The erosion of a riverbed. And I'm here to posit to you today that this butterfly effect is that a small effect can have large consequences. Greta getting up at her first speech has now had large consequences in every school around the world. So we want to take this idea of the butterfly effect and apply it to the water. The water in Estero Bay in this particular conference. We want to make something happen. Each and every one of us in here has the ability to make something happen. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. And eventually we're going to run into a brick wall. Whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, or 100 years from now, we're all going to die. So we're only given a certain number of days to work with. So every day that you get up, you should try to make something happen. Even if you don't know what the outcome is going to be, that's what scares people. I don't know. I'm scared to do something today because I don't know what the outcome's going to be. It doesn't matter. Just make something happen. Be the butterfly that ripples the surface of Estero Bay, and those ripples will extend far and wide. As we have more butterflies in the room doing the same thing, we're going to have more ripples. Those ripples become even more complicated. If you were mapping, modeling 2 planets or 1 planet around the sun, Newton could do that. What kept him awake at night was there were 3 objects, and he could never map all 3 of those objects with absolute precision. In fact, he said, it's kept me awake at night so much I'm not going to think about it any longer. It's proven now today that he could never have come up with the accurate total prediction for all of the planets, all of the moons, and all of their orbits. We have predictions about where they'll go, but they're not completely 100% always accurate. So we don't know what we're going to do. If we do something tomorrow, if I go to a county commission meeting and I speak for 3 minutes and I say, hey, what have you done for Estero Bay lately? And I go home, maybe you've triggered a thought in their head. Well, what have we done for Estero Bay? Maybe you go again the next week. Maybe you bring 2 friends the following week. That's how we do things, first as a neighborhood and then as a community. We're an entire reef system. Each one of us in here is a different kind of fish. We've got damselfish, we've got parrotfish, we've got cleaners, we got everything. But we all need to get together to protect this ecosystem. And even at the higher level, the state. And we have people from Thousand Friends that are here. People that go lobby the legislature, that keep an eye on things going on in Tallahassee. If you haven't done this ever, one of the wonderful things you can do as an activist is sign up for the Everglades Foundation Everglades Day in Tallahassee, where they'll take you there in a bus and they'll train you the night before and they'll bring you into legislator's office 3 at a time with a lobbyist from Everglades Foundation that really knows what they're talking about for science. And you sit down there and you meet your legislature and you see how it works, but they get to see you and they get to see business people and activists and people that live along the water and fishermen. So it's a wonderful thing to do. And then we get to the nation, which right now is full of barracudas in the water, and I don't know if a whole lot gets done positive. As we noticed, whoever is in the presidential administration can have a vast impact. So who we vote for as president can impact whether wetlands in the Everglades are going to be protected or not. So people have to think about that too. And then we are in the vast archipelago in the solar system known as Earth. In the world here, and these are areas, small islands, archipelagos that are going to go underwater because we have failed to care for our climate. In order to fight, man has to fight nature to survive. In the past, we had to make the place that we live in. This used to be wetlands. The West was wild. It had buffalo. We tamed it. We're still taming it with MCORs. We're trying to put more expressways that crisscross the state of Florida. We have to realize now in this century that in order to survive, we must protect nature, not conquer nature. We've seen the Army Corps change their mind about damming the Everglades, now restoring flow. We just need to keep that moving. We have treated our air and our water as our garbage cans. That's where our waste goes. We dump coal into the air, we dump sewage into the waters, we dump fertilizer onto the fields that goes into the canal system that you saw that winds up in our waters, that causes the algae blooms, that cause microcystins to bloom, that cause flesh-eating bacteria and other opportunistic species to flourish. We need to stop treating our system of air and water as our garbage disposal. You can't just push a button and make it all go away because those nitrogen and phosphorus, those chemicals are going to still be there and they're still going to have those impacts. Even though you flush the toilet and everything's gone, or you see the stuff go away, it hasn't gone away. It's invisible, but it has impacts. So remember that we depend on the water, and that was no more evident than 2 years ago when I stopped going in the water and people stopped going out for fishing trips. Charter fishermen had boats on lease because those boats are expensive, those flat boats. You miss 2 or 3 payments, it's just like missing payments on your house. Someone comes and takes the boat away. So they lost their boat, they lost their livelihood, they had to go get jobs. Their children suffered. They didn't have food on the table. Harry Chapin Food Bank had to come to Fort Myers Beach, and people were lined up from the service industry to charter fishermen. Anyone and everyone that depended on tourists coming to Fort Myers Beach had to go get food. The place was empty. Usually you can't drive out there. It takes you forever to get over the bridge. It was deserted. It was like a ghost town. There was no one on the street. There were people bicycling, beach cruisers down the middle of the street and no cars behind them. And some of those people were activists and they were going to take pictures of dead manatees and dead fish and dead tarpon washed up on the beach. And a lot of those people that took pictures got sick from doing that even. So it was just catastrophic. So remember, people will protect what they love. When they realized that the bay was their life. It was their family's life. That's where I took my children to swim. That's where they learned to swim. That's where they learned to fish. Now my life is changed drastically for the worse. So I want to change it. So how do we do that? We need to make something happen. I have a placard. It says, make something happen in big and in little, because both big and little count. And I'm going to start the ball rolling with something seemingly innocuous and stupid and trivial, but I'm going to have everybody here sign this in the front. If you run out of room, just sign it in the back. I'm going to put this in my office, and this is going to help me every morning when I wake up with my cup of coffee, instill me to get there on the computer and make something happen, whatever it might be. So, change is possible. A positive change is possible. We can change. A positive change implies that we have a problem that we want to solve. What's our problem? Water quality. What's our problem? Air quality. They're related, but here we're talking about Estero Bay, so let's just focus on that area, our neighborhood, our community. So you're trying to empower people. A lot of the people in this room are already activists. They're already doing things. Patty's out there. Wayne Daltrey is over here. I look around the room. Everybody I see here, probably a third of the people I know, probably a third of those I've gone to court with on the same side, representing them, helping them get organized. But you've got to convince people that what you're doing is worthwhile and investing their time is worthwhile and that they can do something. So you have to say, is it possible that we could have a clean Estero Bay again? I think it is. We've cleaned up the Cayuga River. It used to have flames. We're working on Lake Erie. It's not done yet. We still need more. We're working on the Everglades. It needs a hell of a lot more. Our water needs to be swimmable again. It's possible that we can do that. If we start doing the right things and stop treating the water as our garbage disposal area for agriculture, for sewer, for our own backyards and our fertilizers on our lawns in Cape Coral, we can do that. So if people believe it's possible, you can empower them and they will engage and they will begin to do things. You can empower others in the same fundamental way that you've empowered yourself. So I have a couple of areas to go into. One is the thing that I get involved in a lot is people calling me because there's some bad thing happening in their community and probably even lower down in their neighborhood. So I get calls from people. What can I do? One is get organized and stay organized. You file your not-for-profit corporation in Florida, and then you have a year to get your 501c3 from the IRS, which will make you tax deductible, or a 501c4 if you want to actively engage in political issues and campaigns, and you want to do some of that, then you form a 501c4. People say, Ralph, we're just going to fight this one issue, this construction and demolition debris facility in Lake Worth Beach. Once we win that, we're going to be done. I said, well, you're never going to be done. It's not a win type of thing. It's a way of life. You are now engaged in your community, and you need an organization because you can't do this on your own, and you have to stay vigilant, and you have to stay there. And you're going to need to raise money, and you need to have a place, a bank account to put that money in. And so this organization allows you to raise money and put money into that organization. Don't quit raising money. Once you raise money, you keep raising money because, again, it's a lifestyle. It's not about winning a particular case. When you're raising money, musical entertainment, I have found, is very helpful. But a wine and seafood festival is even better. Literally, one of my clients in Cortez, in Bradenton, Florida, one of the last remaining fishing villages, has an annual seafood festival. They raise over $100,000 at the weekend seafood festival, and they have volunteers that are about the same number as are in this room. And they have vendors that come, and they have people that they sell food, and they sell food for little tickets that you have to buy at a festival. And so they get paid for their food, but some portion of that gets allocated and goes to the cause, and it's a great fundraiser. Naples Wine Festival is amazing. Southwest Florida Wine Festival is amazing. It's raised millions and millions of dollars. People love eating and drinking. It's a natural thing for us. Choose your spokespersons. Not everyone has to be a speaker to the press, to the news, even to the county commission on a weekly basis. Be polite, pleasant, courteous, neighborly, and sympathetic, but don't be a pushover. So go. to these county commissions, ask for things, get their ask out there. It doesn't help when you show up with a green shirt that says stop the incinerator, and then when the incinerator vote is done, no more green shirts ever show up. And those people that came don't come back again. If I'm the elected officials, I've heard them talking about this. They say, you know, they had 300 people, but they never came back again. I never saw those people again. So, you know, I might have had, you know, a dozen votes at stake on that issue. And so they don't realize. So you want to be a community watchdog. You want to be, at least have somebody in your group go to the meetings. And it's probably a good idea to rotate them, but know the rules of engagement of your local government, but usually there's 3 minutes at the beginning of each meeting. They're open for any topic. You can get up there and you can say, what have you done for Estero Bay lately? Or here's an idea I have for Estero Bay. And then present that and do it week after week, month after month until you are established. Another thing you can do is go home and write a newsletter. ECCL is very successful because they're a coalition of homeowners groups, homeowners organizations for all the different communities in Estero. And they have a newsletter that goes out to everybody. So they can go home, maybe Don Eslick shows up at the podium and says something, and that's one guy. But they know that when he goes home, he's writing a newsletter with his team, and that newsletter is going out to thousands, tens of thousands of rooftops, and people are going to see it. As early as possible, if you are going to go into any kind of hearing, you need to ask for adversely affected party status so that they know that you're going to be affected by this, and try to get additional time. Why do you need additional time? Well, you need additional time to put on your experts. First of all, you're going to need your own attorney, because the attorneys for the government are going to sit at the dais. They're not going to say much. They're going to support the local government board, whichever way they read the tea leaves going. And usually they don't take a side one way or the other. You need expert scientists, and the lawyer can help you identify what subject matters are going to come up in the hearing, and you need an expert in each one of those. Why do you need to present your own science? Because the scientists that work for the local government are bossed. They have administrators. Those administrators talk to the elected officials. The elected officials take campaign contributions. They know they want to approve a particular project because they've already been friends with the developer, been friends with the developer's lawyers and engineers. They go to all their fundraisers. They've collected tons of checks. These are my people. These are the people that brought me out of the board or association I was in and said, why don't you run for a county commission and we'll support you, and put money behind their campaigns. Staff is also limited by the regulations. They say, well, it meets all the regulations. Just because it meets the regulations doesn't mean it meets the science. Again, because say you're at the water management district and you're doing minimum flows and levels, or you're trying to establish a numeric nutrient criteria, they're bossed, they're coached, they're pressured, they're so conservative they lag behind in the science. They're not implementing what the scientists here at the Water College are going to be telling them, or University of Florida or University of Miami. You've got to be on top of it. You've got to present your own science to the elected officials, to the hearing examiners, to the administrative law judges. You've got to be there doing that, even if you lose. So many cases I've gone to hearing and lost in front of the administrative law judge, but won the issue in the end. Properties you could go and lose, and things happen, just like the butterfly effect. The myriad of things that have happened in my 25 years of doing this, I can't even begin to explain to you. But cases we thought we were going to win, and may have had a setback and maybe lost an administrative law judge, we wind up winning in the end. Minimum flows and levels. What's wonderful thing happened there? Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Estero, Bonita Springs, all those cities joined together and challenged the minimum flow and level that was going to be set for the Caloosahatchee River. And we went to the hearing, and we didn't win the hearing. We put some of our scientists on. But meanwhile, water quality was elevated to an issue. When we were driving down Sanibel, when we were driving out Pine Island, you would see a sign that said vote, and it said Republican, Democrat, and then clean water with a check in the box by clean water. Clean water was elevated to a number, at least top 3 priority in the election. And the governor saw that. He ran on the platform. Clean water was an issue he got elected on. what used to be a horrible 3 minutes in front of the Water Management District Board where they would actually make fun of you for participating as a member of the public. They'd belittle you, quip and say things. That board was removed by the governor, and the new board was put in. The Water Management District revisited the minimum flow-in level. So even though we had lost, they went before, it happened right before the recommended order and the final order came out, and so they pulled it back in and redid it. Susan Woods in Marion County was one of my clients. The DCA at the time had found a plan amendment in compliance. She went to Tallahassee. She convinced DCA in the middle of the hearing to change their mind and find the plan amendment not in compliance because it was urban sprawl. So they changed their mind. We were blown away. We went to the governor and cabinet, and they upheld Susan Woods. She had a victory there. In Lee County, you have a hearing examiner process. One of the good things about the hearing examiner process is you're not limited to 3 minutes. You can bring experts, you can present science, you can present citizen science, you can present citizen fact-based observations, you can show photographs, you can explain why something shouldn't be approved. Research papers, reports, all this can go in and you have unlimited time, so that's an excellent opportunity. The other bad thing is if you don't appear there, they won't even let you talk to the Board of County Commissioners for even 1 minute in Lee County. So you must go to the hearing examiner, get your name on the record, and they won't let you say anything even new when you get to the Board of County Commissioners. So that's not the same, and it's anywhere else, but that's unique here in Lee County. So you want to be aware of that, and you want to get your ducks in a row ahead of time. In terms of Estero Bay, I would suggest that I saw a wonderful example, from what I can tell from reading in the newspaper. Maggie can probably tell you a little bit more since she lives closer. I had talked with someone that's involved in this, but it's called the Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit. And they have a coalition there. They have a summit. They have a Biscayne Bay task force as well. 9 people that are appointed by the Miami-Dade, Metro-Dade County Commission. And they are going to get reports back. But the reports and the findings and the coalition and the citizen work that's going on there is incredible. Their 2019 summit recommendations are something I think that we could ask for. We could ask the Lee County Commission for a Estero Bay task force, and maybe even include the Collier County Commission. So here's their findings after having their summit on government and policy recommendations, infrastructure, public works, education and outreach, and research needs. So government policy and recommendations, where it says Biscayne Bay, so that we can believe anything is possible and we can begin to imagine as a group. Because when one person imagines, it's just a dream, but when we all imagine together, it becomes reality. So let's imagine this task force has met, and this is the Estero Bay recommendations of the working group from a Marine Health Summit. The 2020 Estero Bay Marine Health Summit, and it does involve health. As I mentioned, people are getting sick. I wound up in the hospital from a fish hook that they almost had to surgically remove the bacteria that was growing in my thumb, and I had to go back twice, and they had to do that on Christmas Eve. So it is a health issue. So government and policy, establish a permanent Estero Bay Restoration Authority using working groups to A, serve as a collaborative and advocate for Estero Bay health and restoration. B, restore water quality. C, develop a restoration action plan. D, implement the best fast-track option for TMDL, BMAPs, or a restoration action plan. E, develop the mechanics to support and implement future summits. Drinking water risk should be evaluated. The importance of resilience should be evaluated. Estero Bay Health Report Card, 6-month updates with data points across time. Encourage short-term actions that promise results, such as municipal ordinances in every municipality along Estero Bay that can be implemented and shared across the board. Authorization of dedicated funding for an Estero Bay Enhancement Trust Fund, including an Estero Bay license plate. Other shovel-ready, innovative engineering infrastructure projects to enhance and create living shorelines, coastal resilience, oyster bed restoration. Infrastructure and public works. Create a reasonable assurance plan and basin management action plan or the equivalent to establish regional water quality goals and pollution reduction targets. Implement the plans, track the plans, and develop restoration projects. Prevent nutrients and trash from entering Estero Bay. Identify on all the existing nutrient and trash hotspots, clean storm systems and storm drains, implement storm drain pollution prevention technologies, including stormwater trains, where stormwater is treated in one technology, goes to the next technology, and goes to the next technology. Prioritize living shorelines and living seawalls over traditional seawall replacements. Fix the sewers and septic systems, upgrade outdated infrastructure, and transition areas off of septic. We still have parts of Sanibel, Captiva that are on septic. A lot of areas in Lee County and Collier County are also on septic. Education and outreach. Declare Estero Bay an environmental health emergency. Increase the budget for enforcement of current laws that protect Estero Bay. Approve an environmental education grant agreement in the amount of $2 million to focus on Estero Bay health. Create the Estero Bay Marine Health Community Coalition to advance sustainable programs all through Lee and Collier County. Create a committee focused on education and volunteer opportunities related to Estero Bay health. Mandate environmental sustainability best practices for all events on public properties. Mandate oil spill kits on all vessels, including recreational vessels. Conduct a socioeconomic study of Estero Bay ecosystem services. Secure bold institutional support for research coordination, implementation, and application, including interdisciplinary research and data infrastructure. Create a world-class Estero Bay research and monitoring system that is proactive, preventative, anticipatory, and equitable. Prioritize Estero Bay research and monitoring using a community resiliency lens and quality of life outcomes. Have real-time monitoring and reporting of beach closures, water quality measurements, infrastructure failures, water quality risks, the value of recreational fisheries, water quality and bacteria impacts, real estate and property values, hospitality and tourism industry, direct Estero Bay-based jobs such as ecotourism and water taxis, water tours, fishing, those issues, and create a living laboratory for Bay health by training the next generation of scientists, eco-engineers, and environmental stewards through sustainable, resilient policies and business practices. So these are some wonderful things that they can do, and they have some incredible donations from all kinds of businesses that are in Miami-Dade, including some of the biggest polluters. One of the cruise ships that I think got caught, the judge was on the cruise ship and watched them dumping trash off the back of the cruise ship while the case was pending in her court. Said, hey, I thought you said you weren't going to do this in court, and she witnessed it with her own eyes. So we can all make a difference. As one person, there's some things we can do, and that's to be self-aware of our own actions. I mean, we can make conscious decisions on a daily basis. Don't water your lawn. Better yet, don't have a lawn. Put in Florida-friendly landscaping. Even a homeowners association can't yell at you anymore because of a statute that was adopted. People don't utilize it. Stop using fertilizers on your lawn or even on your native plant garden. Stop buying bottled water. Use paper and fabric bags. Don't use plastic bags. Encourage others not to. Donate money to a group that makes change. Join an organization that already exists. The sponsors of this conference are great examples. Vote and elect those with your environmental views. I know there's people in the audience. Nick Betos is there. He's running for county commission. Right behind him, Jacque Lopez is running for the school board. These are people that are here. They care. And there's another one. Fantastic. Everyone needs to volunteer for campaigns. If you're not going to run yourself, volunteer for somebody else. Spread the word. Be like her. Buy products and visit local businesses that support your views. There's sponsors here that run eco-tours. Go visit them. Make sure you go on their tours. Prepare newsletters. Talk to the newspapers. Talk to the television news. The television news is here in the back of the room. Brianna's there. Go introduce yourself to Brianna. Say, hey, would you like to hear from my organization, which is so-and-so? Would you like to hear from me? I'm just Ralf Brooks, but I'll tell you about how I'm impacted by water quality. Educate yourself on issues. There's EcoVoice daily email newsletter. There's the Florida Conservation Coalition. They have a daily news blast. There's others. Get these newspaper reports and read them, Facebook them, share them. If you're going to have an event, go to Facebook and put it on what's called Facebook events. People go there, and every day everything's listed for them to do in town. When you see environmental stuff, environmental people will say, oh, well, let's go there, and you'll meet more like-minded people. Community. Community includes all the government. It doesn't include just the city commission. It doesn't include just the county commission. It includes the school board. It includes the mosquito control district. What are they spraying into your waters? It includes the water hyacinth control district. It includes all these special districts. So you need to make sure that you work with people and get people elected to all these different levels of government that agree with your environmental positions. You can start even earlier by going to your party meetings. Southwest Florida, there's a lot of Republicans, there's a few Democrats. If you want to change environmental policy in Southwest Florida, go to your friends who are Republicans if you're not one yourself. Make sure you go to the Republican luncheons, try to get yourself speaking about Estero Bay to the other Republicans with some ideas about what we can do and why it's important and how we want to support the governor in the race towards improvement of water quality. We want to see, I'm sure the governor wants to see real difference at the end of his 4 years. You know, he's got a blue-green algae task force, but the legislature's created many task forces over the year. How many have resulted in real change? The governor's purchasing 20,000 acres in the Everglades to stop the oil drilling that we were working on. So he's done some real things. We want to make sure that we grow the policies from in both parties because the pendulum is going to swing. That Lorenz effect, the Lorenz attractor towards elections is going to twirl the butterfly effect. And we want to make sure we got all these things twirling and we're trying to create ripples everywhere we can. So go touch the water in those political party meetings. Writing letters is excellent. You saw an example of a letter to the editor of the New York Times. That's the kind of thing you want to do. You want to volunteer to be a guest columnist. John Cassani writes some great guest columns for the news press. Rob Moore from The Conservancy had one in. Just the other day he had one in. You'll see guest columns in the news press. They're looking for things to publish. Include seniors. This is the largest growing sector of our Southwest Florida population is seniors. They have time, they have interests. Many of them are just becoming acquainted with Florida or getting the opportunity to live here on a full-time basis after visiting here for many years. These are people that you have within your group that you can let loose and turn out at the county commission meetings for the 3 minutes sent to the Water Management District in Palm Beach. Carpool, make sure they can get there. Sometimes it's harder for a senior to drive all the way to West Palm. It's a 2.5-hour drive across Highway 80. Get it together in a van and all of you go over there and everyone get up there and speak for 3 minutes. And again, with the butterfly effect, it's not so much what you say, it's the fact that you're there saying something. And saying something about water quality. And whether it's the Everglades and Estero Bay, and whether it's water quality in your backyard or someone else's, it's important to be there. As you move through life, and this world changes you, you want to try to change the world as well, even if it's just slightly. If you can make some small difference, it can be magnified. By other people you work with in your neighborhood, in your community. Think of Greta. What would Greta do? when Greta got pushback from, I don't know what country it was, I forget which one yesterday, I think it was maybe Germany. He said when Greta gets a master's degree in economics, she can come talk to us about addressing climate change. She says, well, it doesn't take a master's degree in economics to know that you haven't met the standards you set for yourself in the Paris Accord, and she was able to run through that. She doesn't give up. She's polite, she's curious, but she doesn't back down, and she's strong, so we can do that. It's a journey, and the journey is an expression of the seriousness of our intent. So begin with some small steps. If it's outside your comfort zone, and it's interesting because it's almost like travel to a country you've never been before. It's not always pretty. It may feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it hurts, and it can even break your heart, what you see. But the journey should change you in a positive way, and you can leave your impact as you go along that journey on everywhere you go. And so as Maggie is here, I really want to commend her. She's been a hero of mine because I can tell you a personal story. When we go to court and we file something in court, there's something called the 56-105 motion, which is a little bit different than what happened to Maggie, but it's a SLAPP suit. It's a strategic lawsuit against public participation. They'll say, your suit is frivolous, so we're going to come after you for attorney's fees. With these 57-105 motions, the lawyers have to pay half. The client pays half, and then your lawyer has to pay half. And I used to be scared to death when I got these things. We got to drop this right away. Oh my God, I'll lose my house. My children have to go to school. Oh my God, I'm going to owe money every month. The court's going to make me pay. They're going to take away my 2 kayaks and my old Toyota. And I'm going to be destitute. And you think, well, there is no debtor's prison, but they can surely imprison you by taking away all your money, especially when you're attached to your money and because you have things you want to do with it. So I was scared to death, and I was terrified. It shook my knees, and I used to have meetings with clients, and we would usually go through it, and my clients were scared to death. And the bad thing was it was hard to sleep after that because you worry that you're going to lose attorney's fees to the other side for trying to accomplish good. And you know you're there for the right reason, but then you have these crazy judges that can rule against you just because of their philosophical or jurisprudential bent, or sometimes even worse, because they're politics. So in Florida, judges are elected just like county commissioners. In fact, it's the same people that elect circuit court judges that elect county commissioners. The same people go to the ballot box. The same people make campaign contributions. So if you don't go to the ballot box, if you're not even making a $5 contribution to a candidate you do like, you can get hosed, pretty easy. The first time you appear in front of a county commission and you state your name and your address like they always make you do, that should not be the first time that those commissioners have heard your name or know who you are. You want to make sure you get to know them ahead of time, even if they're on the other side. Be polite. Be courteous, but don't back down. Let them know you're there and what your issues are for before the hearings come up. So you want to stay engaged on that. But so I used to get so scared of that. Now I'm not so scared anymore. I went through a few of those. We won most of them. There was one we lost, one issue in an administrative hearing out of 30 issues that were raised. There was something about archaeological resource that was in a string citation we had included, like natural and archaeological resources, and bad lawyers from Tallahassee that represent all the polluters said, well, he didn't bring up anything about archaeology. And we had an archaeologist ready to go. And we spent this amount of money. And the judge says, well, we didn't really discuss archaeology. It was 1/30 of the thing. I'm going to make you pay $1,000. So we had to pay $1,000. And then the builder was gracious enough to let us donate it to Habitat for Humanity. So we did that. After that, it wasn't quite as scary. And then I saw what's happening lately. There was a slide with Ted Danson up here from the Troubled Waters movie. Ted and an old 60s anti-war activist, Jane Fonda, they're going to get themselves arrested. I think it's like every Friday or every other week. And Jane was on the late night television shows talking to all the late night TV hosts about what a liberating feeling it is to do civil disobedience and get arrested. And I was like, what? I almost choked on my wine. She said, yeah, you spend the night in jail, so be ready to go. Bring your toothbrush, dressed in layers because it's going to get hot. It could be cold. And she said, if you're in a layer, you can always take off your sweater, fold it up like this, and use it as a pillow. And she said she just loves it. She feels invigorated and young again, and she can't wait till she can go again. And she knows all the police officers by now, and they're nice to her, and all the others that get arrested. And now she's even got other celebrities who are using their celebrity because they can get in the news to come and get arrested with her. So a whole bunch of people are getting arrested. And it's gotten to the point now where I had someone call me from Lake Worth. They were worried about historic preservation in their city, and they were about to tear down a building. And they said, how do we get arrested like Jane Fonda? They wanted to go ahead and do it so they would get the news to pay attention to them. So there's all kinds of things we can do. Make something happen. It can be big, it can be small. You don't know what the impact's going to be. Very likely you won't know what the impact's going to be, and sometimes they're just fantastic and wonderful. So keep pursuing what you're doing. Thank you. Yep. The list of the Biscayne Bay, yes. I'll give you a link to those two, and then I'm also going to give you a link to citizen resources. Can you imagine if we have 100 citizens that are armed like an army with all public records? They know where to go look up all the agendas, the backups, the DEP Oculus program, the Water Management District sites, all the water quality sites. We want to make sure you can get to the hearing examiner transcripts, all the zoning letters and correspondence. I'm going to have a list of all these links, and I'm working with Nora to put that up on the website, and it should be ready within a few days. And if your email's with Nora, we'll have an email to you as well.
Yes, I wonder if you can say something about local ordinances about environmental quality and home rule and preemption.
Sure.
And rights of nature.
Okay, that's wonderful. So I'm one of the lawyers working with Rights of Nature, and I'm proud to say that. There's a lot of lawyers that think we're kooks. But it's not true. It's outside the box thinking. It's probably where we're going to be one day. Rivers are going to have rights. So right now, guess what? I was talking before about forming a 501c3. The Friends of the Caloosahatchee River, Inc., just throw an idea out there. Under the Supreme Court rulings, that's a person. So you could create your own persons, and the persons have rights. So your Friends of the Caloosahatchee River, Inc. right now already is a person, but we would like to get, like in New Zealand, you're allowed to have a river be a person. And I went to visit New Zealand this past summer, and it was amazing the things that did to all the farms in the area and everyone that were user groups of the water and impacted the water quality. They're all working on a restoration action plan for this particular river that now has rights. And the two indigenous tribes people have been appointed as guardians or keepers for that river to ensure that their rights are there. Plastic bags, we were allowed to do some ordinances. They did one in St. Augustine Beach, and then the Florida legislature came and said you can't have a plastic bag ordinance. Single-use plastic ordinances and laws are getting passed all around the world. It's about time they get passed here. It's embarrassing again. I sit as city attorney for a city in a barrier island city in Pinellas County, and a girl from 4th grade came up and told us and chastised us for not having a littering thing that would address single-use plastics and for not banning cigarettes on the beach, cigarette smoking. The legislature preempted us. So the council sitting there, they want to do something, and the legislature says, we're going to tie your hands, we can't do it. She said, you know what, do it anyway. So then the legislature came back and said, if you do something that's preempted, you're going to have to pay attorney's fees. So they started shaking like I used to shake. So we are back. We're trying to get that repealed. The governor, DeSantis, from the Republican Party, again, he vetoed the ban on plastic straws. So there's the first step. I remember when I was a young lawyer in Key West in 1991, we had a conference. I also do civil rights work. And we had a conference like this one, and we dreamed and we thought change is needed. change is possible. We say, wouldn't it be great if LGBTQ could adopt? Someone said, wouldn't it be great if LGBTQ could marry? And they said, wow, yeah. And then I said to myself, you know, I'm going to work on this. And my law partner, who is gay, we worked and we got adoption, and then we got marriage passed, and he has 2 children. He's fostered many others. He's got a wonderful husband and a wonderful life, and I would feel amazed to be a part of it. I know that when I was sitting there, I said, you know, maybe that's something that can happen in my lifetime, maybe not. I wasn't so optimistic. It happened pretty damn quick. My grandfather was from Riga, Latvia, and he worked his entire life typing in a newsletter after he came to the United States about how to free Latvia. He lived to be 98 years old. He passed away. 2 years later, the wall came down in the Soviet Union, and Latvia was free, and now Latvia is part of a NATO state. And so just because something doesn't happen in your lifetime doesn't mean it's not worth working on or working toward. And it'll happen. You know, when we are dead, we're going to be dead for a long time, and we will not know, but it doesn't mean it's not worth working on now, because it's the feeling that you get from working on it that inspires you and gives you life and makes you happy and makes you a fulfilled person in what you want to do. So it's as much about for yourself as a human being as it is about the environment too. So remember that, and about your children and generations to come. I was in St. Augustine Beach, and one of the community activists said, I ask us all to make this decision tonight based on how it will impact 7 generations from now, from the Native American indigenous saying. And then I'm worried too. I go, oh my God, 7 generations. What is sea level rise going to look like here in 7 generations? Because we failed to do something this generation. We still have a chance to do something. It's running away pretty quickly. Thank you.
Gentlemen and ladies, Ralf Brooks.